My talk is titled Mary Magdalene Speaks, and this is my 5th book that I've channeled with spirit. My name is Marcia McMahon, and I'm very delighted to be here out amongst spiritually minded folk, and I put a lot of effort and time into creating this book. I am also an artist and a channeler, a medium, and in the past I was working with Princess Diana a lot and Archangel Michael, and I had hosted a radio program called The Peaceful Planet. And when I hosted the program, I had a lot of really interesting people come on to talk about the Jesus Mystery Series. And I got into investigating Jesus and his true life story that wasn't written in the Bible, things that I just came across. And they say there are no coincidences. And so even you here today are in for a rare treat, because you're going to be experiencing the vibrations of Mary Magdalene as I read from this book. Mary Magdalene is the most uncovered person in the Bible. She is only mentioned as the woman that anointed Jesus' feet at the Last Supper, and she isn't even mentioned by name. And so the church fathers had eliminated Mary, but there is a lot of evidence now that has come to light through archaeology, because the Gospel of Mary belongs to the Essene writings known as the Gnostic Gospels, and that was discovered in the late 1800s. It wasn't until after World War II that it was thoroughly deciphered and decoded from the ancient Coptic, but it was found in the ancient desert of Egypt. Now, why this is important is because how many of you have heard of the Gnostic Gospels or the Coptic Gospels? Have you? Because I've always had an interest in biblical archaeology, but all of these various disciplines came together for me when I visited Israel and when I did past life regression. So Mary Magdalene comes alive on the pages, telling us all about her life with Jesus at that time, which was not recorded because it was a male world back then. And Jesus was, he was truly Messiah. He was the fulfillment of the prophesied coming. And Mary Magdalene was relegated to that of mainly they made her into a harlot, which she never was. And I can tell you on good authority that she was his wife. And when I first encountered this on, the Da Vinci Code, how many of you have seen the Da Vinci Code movie? Almost everyone has heard of it. I didn't really believe it, but I was an art historian at the time, and I had just begun doing this Holy Grail series on the Peaceful Planet. Now, to backtrack a little bit, I was creating the Peaceful Planet to bring world peace with Princess Diana. And some of you in the audience may have my older books on Princess Diana. And those are all classics, and she channeled through me at the first Spirit Fest many, many years ago. I think it was 2003. So it's really a delight to be here. But to give you a little bit background, I was exploring various authors on my radio program, and then psychics. And I had visiting psychics come on my show and say, well, did you know that you had a past life with Jesus? And I was like, well, I suspected I might, but I was never too sure, So I called another psychic that was well connected to Archangel Michael, and she asked me, about it, and I asked her, and she took me back, and I suddenly remembered the green hills of Galilee and all of that. But she wasn't a regressionist, but she gave me an indication of where to go next. So then I did belong to a spiritualist church at that time, and we're talking about Mary Magdalene Speaks if you just arrived, and this is by myself, Marcia McMahon, and I've been channeling Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary since about 2004. So The first channeling I ever had from Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene confirmed that there was indeed a child, and that was channeled onto the first radio show I did called the Grail Mysteries. That's a subtitle of The Peaceful Planet. So, in essence, I had been channeling these beings of light, and I always was I used to be religious. I was raised Catholic, I became a Protestant, but basically I could always hear Jesus, and I didn't know that that was really anything unusual. I thought everyone, if they prayed, they could hear Jesus. I didn't realize I was practicing mediumship at that time either. But, you know, my skills evolved with Princess Diana to where I could get very clear in my channeling. So anyway, I, as an art scholar, saw the Da Vinci Code, and I looked at the painting, and I had to look it up that night, and I looked at the painting, and I realized, you know, that has to be Mary Magdalene. There was a red-headed woman sitting next to Jesus at the Last Supper. If you look up the, you know, the Da Vinci painting of the Last Supper that was done in the Middle Ages, you will see a beautiful fresco of his Last Supper, and Mary is right there. It's a female figure. It is not St. John the Divine, as many art historians would portray her to be. So anyway, I began channeling these individuals, but I wasn't too keen when Jesus came to me and asked me to put my book together on what my knowledge was about, you know, his life and my past life and Mary's life. And I had been channeling beautiful messages of the Divine Feminine with Princess Diana, Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene. Well, you'll get to hear some of these today, and they are really powerful messages. But to get back to the storyline, I decided I would go and get a past life regression after I called this psychic on our radio show, the BBS radio show. I still have a few files left, and you can pick up some recordings of the music that I produced and some of the interviews, but I only have a few, and I have a few books left. And if we don't have enough books for everyone, you can certainly place an order and I can ship it to you. So no problems on that. But it was an extraordinary experience personally for me, because more than one psychic friend said, "Oh yeah, I know who you were in a past life," and you know, she started calling me by name and everything, and I was like, no, I don't think so. But I decided I would go and get a regression done, since it seemed like it was an important, you know, an interesting adventure. So I went to this professional hypnotherapist named Merlin, of all names, and he lived up to the name in every way. Merlin was magical, and he could put you under in like that. Now, I do past life regression as well today, but at that time, that was my first past life regression. And I was sitting in Merlin's suburban office, and all of a sudden, he brings me back, and I went to visit one past life where I was with Princess Diana, and we were best of friends. And past life regression is, it's light hypnosis. It's not anything too deep or anything. You can't lose your mind or, you know, do something out of character or anything. You're pretty much the same soul in all your lifetimes. So if you were a good person in this lifetime, or you are a good person, you will be a good person in a last life too. So it's nothing to be feared. But I had to overcome my fears when I went to Merlin, and the second regression I saw was Jesus walking alongside me in the white robe. And he was very tall gentleman, I would say 6 feet, with a long, thin frame. He had deep, beautiful blue eyes, and when you looked into his eyes, you could feel the radiating love and the power. And I felt and saw the Mount of the Beatitudes that day, where they did the feeding of the 5,000, and he gave his teaching on the Beatitudes. And then I could see other aspects that were less desirable for him personally. I could see the crucifixion going on. And then after I came up out of the regression, I had no recollection of what happened at the time of the so-called resurrection. So I explore this in the book. And there are a variety of happy endings for Jesus. And he told me himself that he did pass to spirit, and he had no choice in that matter. Whereas when I had people on my show, these were people that had been doing past life regression from England. They were named Joanna Prentice and Stuart Wilson, and they wrote a book, a famous book called The Power of the Magdalene, and they discovered that there were female healers inside the tomb of Jesus, and they had placed crystals inside the tomb in order to heal the master. And so it was a plan that they say was hatched by Joseph of Arimathea. Now in my book, the story goes a little bit differently. Anyway, I explored all these themes, but the following week, when they said that Jesus survived the crucifixion and went to India, and that he went to India as a boy, that felt right to me. That seems right. Now, the survival of the crucifixion, I don't know. I can't say for sure because I did not see it in my past life at all. But I do explore the various endings because they're all different types of potentialities, shall we say. So how it relates to Mary Magdalene is that Jesus, in his early youth, went to India to explore and learn from the great masters there. So he is rumored to have meditated with the great master Babaji, and he learned from other great masters. Now, if you're familiar with Master Yogananda, and how many of you have heard of Autobiography of a Yogi or Master Yogananda? It's a spiritual classic. Well, Yogananda said that Jesus went to India. And then I had people on my show the following week that said, after I interviewed Joanna and Stuart, the following week they came on, this Ed Martin came on, and he made a movie called Jesus in India. And he was in the movie, he was the star of the movie, and they discovered a tomb belonging to Esau. Esau was the name in Arabic for Jesus, and it was a crucified person who lived to be about 120 years old. And the tomb exists to this day in Afghanistan. And so the Muslims run the tomb, and they claim that there's no magic about it. But all these things were running together, various oral traditions and archaeological evidence that he possibly survived the crucifixion after all, or was resurrected, knew the secrets of the resurrection through studying in the temples in ancient Egypt or with the Indian masters, and was able to revive himself and travel to India. So he either traveled there in the light body and ascended or whatever. But after the crucifixion, Mary Magdalene and he were separated. But as I knew him in that life, I was a female disciple, and I was related to Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene's secret code name was Magdalene, but she was known better in the Bible as Mary of Bethany. So this is the same person. Some traditions will place her as different, but she was the same person, and she gave me many messages about myself and the past life, and confirmed that I was her sister, Martha. I was like, oh my goodness. I saw the past life, but it didn't all come clear to me until I went on spiritual pilgrimage to Israel. In 2012, I had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and it traveled to my brain. And my brother decided, he's very religious Catholic, decided it was time to take me on spiritual pilgrimage to either get a healing or see the Holy Land before I transitioned. So I went, and the funniest things happened because I had only undergone a couple of regression sessions, and then all of a sudden, we're in Jerusalem, we're in the Galilee, and I recognized the spiritual energy of Jesus at the rock-hewn tomb. The energy was full of orbs. There were angels everywhere. It was like this garden here. Now, I believe you have a recreation here on the grounds of the Jesus tomb, don't you? Because it looks just like that. You have a really good recreation. So the rock-hewn tomb did belong to Joseph of Arimathea, And when I walked in, I was with my brother, and he had heard my past life as Martha, and he said, well, you must have been Martha, but he's a Catholic, and he doesn't believe in things like this. But, you know, I had a lot of channeling from Jesus that confirmed that I was Martha, but I had never intended to put it into a book. But when I walked into the tomb, I actually recognized where Jesus had lain, and then I realized that it had to be true. Between all the orbs in the garden and then recognizing the tomb and knowing where his body had been laying, I had to have been in the tomb helping with the burial and possibly healing, though I don't remember doing any healing. So I also went to the home of Martha and Mary, which is preserved today as a church of Martha and Mary, and I had similar things happen where I walked into the home and I recognized Lazarus' tomb. So it couldn't be coincidence, and I do believe that wherever you've been before, you will step in again to that place in your sacred travel journey. You're always where you're meant to be, and there are no coincidences. And so it was so extraordinary to step into the energy of Lazarus' tomb. There are two tombs, one on the 4th floor and one on the bottom. And something about the 4th floor didn't feel right to me. And then I walked around in Bethany with a lady named Sahar, and she actually walked with me down to the downstairs tomb, and that felt like where the resurrection happened. So I'm going to share a few of Mary's messages and some of my recollections. And I think her purpose in bringing forth these messages now is mainly to ground more of the divine feminine energy for mankind, because at the time that Jesus taught, he actually regarded Mary as his equal and his wife and his partner. They had been married only briefly before the crucifixion. There was a child between them, and I had the pleasure of knowing and regressing this person who was the Grail, the Holy Grail child. So the Grail is not a chalice or a cup, but there are many artifacts associated with Joseph of Arimathea, and he holds them in safekeeping on the other side in heaven. And Bob Murray, a famous medium that I worked with for years, invited me to his studio where Joseph had a showing of the artifacts, and I tuned into about 9 of the artifacts and did readings from the artifacts after touching into them by traveling, astral travel to the other side to get these important Akashic records, you might say. They were Akashic. So there's so much in this book that is so astounding. Joseph reveals how Jesus was resurrected, and he reveals that he himself, tried to save Jesus, and he was in possession of part of the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant was useful in helping to raise Jesus. So he gives you all kinds of explanations and all kinds of new revelations, nothing of which is recorded in the Bible, much less Jesus' travels to India, because for the first 33 years of his life, we don't really know what happened to him. But anyway, I'd like to share some of Jesus and Mary's messages. And Mary was appointed to be basically the chiefest of the female disciples and a teacher of the inner way of mastery, while Peter was appointed to be an external disciple of the basic rules and the law of love and getting the so-called church started. So they had different roles, but he renamed her the Magdalene because he was always renaming his disciples. You knew that he renamed Peter too. It was Simon, and he changed the name to Peter. But the name Magdalene actually means Tower of Strength. And there is a town in Galilee that I did visit and is being excavated today, and it is called Magdala. And Magdala sits on the shores of the Galilee, and it's very close to the home of Bethany. So I got to see all this great stuff, and I tuned into the energy, and that was confirmation for me. So I still had no interest in writing this book because I thought I don't want to appear as if I'm special in any way, and I don't want to be ostracized or criticized for my work either. And I've had some of that in my work, but I genuinely believe that I did walk with the Master. My memories contain him, and I am in touch with other people who came to me for past life who were connected to our soul family. So I believe that we all travel in a soul family. We're all related, and we meet again when the time is right. So I just reconnected with Mike today here, and we have a connection, I think, that goes back. A lot of the people that I did readings for today, I know we were Azims in that life, and so, you know, it's a very interesting time to be alive, because Jesus' teachings were not well received and were greatly misinterpreted by most of the Catholic Church and a lot of the other churches as well, because they've been reinterpreted so often and recopied by the monks in the Middle Ages who didn't know the significance of Mary Magdalene. So the Church Fathers in 350 AD just decided to do away with Magdalene entirely and make her into a prostitute when she was really Jesus' wife. But she had written Gospels, and you could see from her actions, even in the recorded Gospel, of her anointing of Jesus and her devotion to him at the cross, that she had to have been in an intimate relationship, because the Romans would not let anyone, just anyone, come to attend to relatives except people that were related. It wasn't an affair for the general public. It was for the private family members. So anyway, I'm going to read to you some selected readings, and I hope you feel the energy of Mary Magdalene and get something out of this reading, because I feel that the Divine Feminine, with the honor of working with Princess Diana, Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene, and by the way, all my books are fully illustrated, and this is one of my recent paintings of Mother Mary. So I channel these paintings in, and I also do aura paintings by commission. I'm not really set up today to paint aura, but I will accept commissions through, getting to know you and a picture. So back to this message. Now, I did visit sacred sites in England, and Joseph of Arimathea happened to own most of the tin mines in the world, and he frequently visited the tin mines in the United Kingdom, which was called Britain at that time, and it was Roman occupied. Joseph of Arimathea was one of the richest men in the world, and was Jesus' uncle. He provided the tomb for Jesus. I'm speaking of the rock-hewn tomb, but he also had lands all over the world that he owned. And he had a huge shipping fleet, and he had a system for keeping track of his ships, and he had psychics helping him to navigate those ships without maps. They were going by the stars alone. So Joseph is a very exciting character, and he was my father in Bethany there. He was gone most of the time because he was so busy. But he took most of the female disciples after the crucifixion to England to resettle, because we were all wanted for being an associate of a criminal, so-called. So everyone had to escape, and it was very sad, because we had enjoyed so many beautiful times together as a spiritual family around Mary and Jesus and all the disciples, and learning the law of love, which was only his teaching. I don't know where they got all these other rules made up, but I don't have it on any good authority that there was an actual virgin birth or anything like that. But I did visit Mary's home in Nazareth, and I did visit Anna's home, and Princess Diana told me that she was the grandmother to Jesus. So we're all interrelated. Again, you come into contact with those you work with in spirit, or those you work with in the physical realm, because we're all interrelated. So it's a beautiful story. So anyway, I take a deep breath here and just center yourself and be prepared to listen to the wisdom and the words of Mary Magdalene, the beautiful Mary Magdalene, who didn't get to speak her truth. And she has written a gospel, so do check it out online. It's called the Gospel of Mary. It's called the Coptic Gospel of Mary, or the Gnostic Gospel, but it is not authenticated. by the Catholic Church. So here goes. It's called Mary Magdalene's Message at the Chalice Well, and I'm visiting England, and I'm stepping into a garden dedicated to Mary Magdalene, and there are all these wells. Well, supposedly in Glastonbury is where the Grail cup is housed, or so they believe. But the truth be told is there is really no Grail cup anymore. It's just the Grail is really the marriage between Jesus and Mary, and it's also the wisdom of the divine feminine. So that's all it really is. So Mary says, at the Chalice Well, which is dedicated to her memory, and it has the Magdalene imprints all over, and I've got pictures from my trip in the book. She says, it is my pleasure to come forth to speak to the world in this sacred place at Glastonbury, the shrine of the holy wells here at the Chalice Well. There is not only one Chalice Well, but many wells, and the chalice of the Holy Grail is also here, but only in spirit. For those who want the artifact, they will never find it. The artifacts decay over time, as the righteous one, Jeshua, told us all. The well is the secret place of the Holy Grail indeed. And you have amongst you today many of the original disciples here today. What a blessed and joyous energy in unison. Gathered around this well in memory of me, we have Jeshua, and it is indeed a great day in the sun. For the sunshine is now pouring forth a magical glistening light, a rainbow. Out of the mists of Avalon, on the other side of the holy tour, a holy chamber is being birthed. My dear friends everywhere, this birthing chamber of the Grail child is but the birth of the divine feminine sacred energy. All the secrets that the Church has held and withheld for centuries will be known in this book and in forthcoming other revelations, revealing the truth of the real Holy Grail. For the meaning of the Holy Grail is not a person, nor the blood of Jeshua, nor even my child. I had named her Sarah and carried her through to Egypt, gave birth, and then traveled to France, and finally to England, to this very site. The Holy Grail is not an artifact. The Holy Grail is the divine feminine, which is being birthed from these wells, from the wells of the subconscious mind of mankind and womankind. So this is the kindness of the divine feminine that can be known and experienced as the divine love between a man and a woman, as it once was with Jeshua and I 2,000 years ago. And so this was channeled and recorded at the Glastonbury tour at the Chalice Well in the United Kingdom, and that was in 2017. And that was on a sacred pilgrimage with two people that were also previously disciples. So, you know, it was an extraordinary day, and the energies of those sacred wells, I can still remember it. And I collected the well water, and I make rose water out of it. And when I do my divine feminine retreats and healing, I use that rose water that's blessed at the Glastonbury well. And Archangel Michael told me that rose water is the highest vibrational water that you can use for healing. So I have another special message from Mary, and she speaks on the Grail and her time in France. Now, she did educate us that she had left Palestine in Joseph's boats, and we had traveled to Egypt together, and I'm sure that I was with her in Egypt. And then she gave birth to the child in Egypt, and Mother Mary was there attending the birth. But then, no sooner had she given birth than there were knocks on the doors by the Romans. And so she had to flee to France. And there are stories about Marie Saint-Demer, and Marie Saint-Demer is a little Catholic church with a big secret. And that priest unearthed some artifacts about 100 years ago or so, and he went to the Vatican with the artifacts, and he became a very wealthy priest and was able to retire with the secret knowledge. Now Mary tells me that there were bone fragments discovered, and she also feels that there were fragments of her Gospels buried there. And the Vatican is holding on to this secret information because they don't want women to have equal power to men. They still, it's a big men's club, you know. And thankfully we have spiritual people like the spiritualists who believe that women are equal to men. And that even, you know, Jesus was even teaching the equality of children, and he was pointing out the innocence of children too. So fathom that. The next thing that it's going to move to is children's rights. So that's right though, because women still aren't treated equally. And so Mary was unfairly given a bad rap in history. There's a lot of missing history, but she tells me that one of her Gospels will be discovered at this time of the birthing of the Divine Feminine, and it will be in France in one of her caves. And there is a cave devoted to Mary. I haven't been able to travel there, obviously, because of the COVID and the shutdown. I'd like to share this message with you, though. A child of the two, Jesus and Mary Magdalene, has been debated for years. In an Ascension class I taught this past year, a person attending revealed a past life regression as the child of Sarah, of both Mary and Jesus. More will be forthcoming as Mary would like the story told. This has been authenticated to me in more than one way. Mary Magdalene speaking now. So just go into her sacred divine feminine energy. You can close your eyes. You can receive whatever truth you want from her. And she's addressing us. My child, it is I, Mary Magdalene. We spent time in France where I kept vigils to ignite the love flame for Jeshua as he often channeled through me to help me write by candlelight at night. I'm seeing Mary in a vision with thorns on her head, an early Christian ritual that would have been done in memory of Jeshua but not continued today. She goes on to say, I lived a simple existence in France with you at that time. We had other apostles and followers of Jeshua at the time with this, and we worked very hard on many projects. I wrote a gospel there by candlelight at night and kept it in a secret place, a kind of cave. It was known about by my knights, the Knights Templars in the Middle Ages, who rediscovered it. It may have been kept by them, or it may have deteriorated with time. It is not exactly known to me, but it'd be wonderful if the current keepers of my bloodline and faith, who are known today in Scotland, the Rosalind Chapel, in parentheses, would be able to recognize it. So she's giving us a clue as to where the archaeology might be. It would be wonderful to go on a tour through that cave, but you know, the one that's devoted to Mary is in the south of France. It said she lived in the south of France, and there was this church, Saint Marie de la Mer, and that is said to be the place where Martha and Mary landed 2,000 years or more ago with the child Sarah, who was called the servant girl. So Mary goes on. I burned the candle at both ends, being an apostle and writer, an evangelist or carrier of the holy wisdom. We did not at that time call it the Grail, but she's speaking directly of her child here. But you, my child, are the Grail, and you are being asked to come forth with your identity and reveal stories of our lives together in France. More regressions will be required, and you must take up the pen that I left in that life and write the truth about the divine feminine and the truth of the life of the master Jeshua. Jeshua was everything to me, the heart flame of my life and meaning of being a savior and Messiah. We loved one another even from beyond the grave, as it is recorded in your Gospels today. We met at the first Easter morning. To gaze upon the resurrection was like no other experience possible. While it is true that I did not quite recognize Jeshua, as he had gone through a transformation. While he did ascend in his spirit body, we're then able to communicate through my prayer and devotion to him as both my husband and Savior. He was and still is everything to me. My mission was accomplished in that life, and I work from this plane, the spirit plane, now. For all who need me may turn to me, and I will be there as an aspect of the divine feminine. With love and light, Mary Magdalene of France, of the true bloodline of Jesus Christ. So, these are very interesting, thought-provoking messages, and I will make time for any questions you may have. I could go on and on. Go ahead, please.
The astral projection.
Pardon me?
The astral projection.
Astral projection?
Yeah, that you talked about. Can you talk some more about that?
You're referring to the resurrection, or?
No, like street travel, like you're traveling. The astral
Oh, astral travel.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so when I went to Bob Murray's studio and saw the Grail artifacts, yeah. Bob Murray, as a medium in Canada, he's famous, and he has passed to the spirit plane, but we work a little bit differently. But he taught me from the spirit plane how to astral project into the heavenly realms. I usually just sit in my typewriter and receive the information coming in from the masters or mediumship, but he does it a little differently, and he trained me, and it's recorded in this book, how you travel out on the silver cord, but you remain connected to the imaginary silver cord, and you travel out. So he had described his place. He also worked with John Lennon and Diana, and we were in the same spirit group of family. So he lives down the meadow from where Diana and Dodie live in the spirit realm. And I projected myself into Murray's house in the afterlife. I've seen drawings of it because his son James is also a medium who he trained. So I went over there, and lo and behold, to my utter surprise, I thought I was going to be channeling Bob Murray on this, but instead there were all these artifacts arranged in Bob Murray's library. And the artifacts were the actual Holy Grail artifacts pertaining to the mysteries that have since disappeared from civilization. But I encountered Bob Murray, and I met Joseph of Arimathea personally. He was dressed in a kind of a brown robe, and he was glowing white with white light, and he had long hair, long white hair and a beard. And he showed me the various artifacts. He showed me a piece of the True Cross. He showed me the Black Madonna from the Church of Saint Marie de la Mar. Would you like me to read an excerpt of that? Do we have time, or do we not have time?
We've got 10 minutes.
We've got 10 minutes. How about I read you an aspect of one of the Grail Mysteries? So he also reveals how the resurrection was accomplished, or the, reigniting of Jeshua energy. And that's a fascinating chapter too. Now I'm looking for, I better check the contents and see where it's at, because this is a long book, but he gets into all these different Grail artifacts. So let me check the Grail Artifacts Speak at Bob Murray's Study in Heaven, page 156. And the book is still available, but I only have a few copies. So if you'd like to pick one up, I'm having a book signing right after the talk. The Grail Artifacts Speak at Bob Murray's Study in Heaven. So, Bob Murray is giving me directions on how to travel to the astral plane. And by the way, I don't recommend, and unless you're an advanced medium, that you try this, because, it might be iffy. You should probably get some training. But it is a safe way to do it. So I'm imagining that I'm still connected to the silver cord, and I'm going in my imagination over to the other side. And Bob says, surround yourself completely in the light and come up to the higher vibrations of this room. Relax and adjust to the surroundings here. As you look around, what do you see? Marcia, I'm seeing a special tree outside your window and it's blossoming. And I feel that it's a graft from Joseph of Arimathea's thorn tree that was and still exists to this day, 2,000 years later, at Glastonbury. Glastonbury Abbey has the only thorn tree, and it blooms once at Christmas and once at Easter. Pretty interesting. So I'm seeing the thorn tree. I'm looking around at old leather-bound books, play scripts dating thousands of years back, biblical manuscripts, and accounts of Jeshua. I'm seeing all kinds of them in some ancient urns, and some of them are painted, and other urns are containing old scrolls. There are urns here that were found in the Egyptian desert regarding Mary Magdalene's story, and missing pieces of wood from Joseph's boat. All of these artifacts are glowing with energy and love, and they seem to come alive. They are almost like the mysteries of the museum. How many of you have seen that movie, The Mysteries of the Museum at Night, or something like that? It was done about 10 years ago. The artifacts have a life of their own. Bob says, yes, you're getting it, you're getting it. I've assembled a collection of artifacts for you to look at. So all I had to do was look at it and touch into them, and I could do an Akashic reading from, projecting myself there. I'm seeing a piece of the Holy Cross and a very rugged looking nail. I'm gazing at some thorns from Jeshua's crown. I'm looking at the chalice that was used at the Last Supper, which was pretty simple, one of stone or limestone. Bob, you're welcome to all of this. I've arranged for those to be on loan from Joseph of Arimathea. You see, I've assembled an entire Grail quest in my study for you right now, and you can choose any one of these artifacts to open, and they will speak to you. This Bob Murray is something else. He is so powerful as a medium. What about your advice, Bob? No, I don't want to give any advice. I think it is much more fun this way. You will enjoy it. Well, frankly, Bob, I'm still looking around. The wood from the boat is calling me first. He says, go over and touch the wood that is sitting on my display table. Tell me what the wood has to say. The wood from Joseph's ship. This is the wood from one of Joseph's many ships. The wood seems to say that it's very tired from making so many trips back and forth from England to Palestine and back again. Then it was eventually lost in the shipwreck around 300 AD. This was the wooden ship in which all the disciples traveled from Palestine to Egypt. Then it still survived after the oars and sails were removed when the disciples were stranded at sea, relying only on the wind. So there is an ancient myth about Mary Magdalene and Martha and her servant girl being stranded out at sea. And I can tell you that that's no myth. That really did happen. And they stripped the oars, and we landed miraculously on Cyprus or one of the islands, and Joseph heard wind of it and rebuilt the ship. But the Romans had heard of us in Egypt, and they set us outside. So the ship came ashore on the island of Crete, where it was repaired and new oars and sails were added. During that time, there were opportunities that Joseph provided for food and shelter, and of course, he came along on another ship to make sure everything was going smoothly. The ship was once again ready to sail, and it had a special name, and I'm getting the word maiden voyage. But I'm not sure if it's the proper meaning. It was certainly used for a lot of the maidens that needed to escape from Palestine and the supporters of Jeshua around Palestine. So, we eventually landed on the shores of France, and I'm being reminded that we landed near a little chapel that was dedicated to Sarah and Mary Magdalene at Sainte Marie de la Mer. Inside the grotto, there are many artifacts housed below the chapel and containing secrets the Catholic Church has kept hidden. I'm looking at these artifacts here. Are there any others on display? So then I touch into the Black Madonna, and it's really powerful too. But I think I'm coming to the end of the talk, am I not? And 4 minutes, so I can read the secrets of the Black Madonna, because this is one of the best kept secrets of ever. So I'm seeing Sarah, and I see the Black Madonna resembles a darker girl who could have come from Egypt. She was rumored to be the slave girl of Mary Magdalene, but that was only a decoy for Sarah, the child between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, who was born in Egypt. The Black Madonna speaks and tells us all about her life story. So I'm touching into the Black Madonna. There is actually a Black Madonna that exists on the earth plane to this day. Thousands of pilgrims have touched me and regained their health, though believing the power of healing from Mary Magdalene and Jeshua. I am the most sacred of relics, and I come to speak to you today of the story of Sarah. Sarah, in this region of France, there were many who knew of my real identity. The priest, whom you know, dug up these finds. He was very well aware that there was an only child, and it was myself. He was paid a high ransom note from the Catholic Church and for recovering this material. He actually found my bones and the shovel and other precious relics, including parts of the true cross and other fragments of Mary Magdalene's Gospels there. They were in a kind of a cellar, as I understand. What was revealed was so upsetting to the church and the hierarchy, they decided to make this priest very wealthy and let him live out his days in luxury. Then the church confiscated the relics, the Gospels, and other items of Mary Magdalene's. They are now sealed up somewhere deep inside the Vatican Library and only available to a trusted few cardinals. Marcia, this is as interesting as it gets. It's as interesting as the Da Vinci Code, so please do go on, Sarah. You know me as the soul aspect of Erica, but she does not contain the full record of the accounting of what really happened to me in my life. So I will continue telling the story. When we arrived, I was a toddler, and my mother and I stayed with you, Martha, in a cave for a while. You were my aunt, and you took good care of me. Mother was very busy with her new way of mastery. There were many followers of hers back then, and it was all held in secret in a cave. Now there is a Magdalene cave in France, and you can Google that. Mother and I stayed in this region of southern France in the Languedoc from 3 to 10 years. We had heard of the Druids welcoming us because Uncle Joseph had been associated with the area of Cornwall known as the Summerland. This is the area where Uncle Joseph and Jesus had landed and visited at one time. My father, Jeshua, came to visit me both in dreams and in the flesh, so apparently he could materialize a body for a period of time. He was always very lighthearted and smiling, and he had a beautiful smile and a radiant way about him. My mother, Mary, is a little bit more serious, and she does a lot of meditation. But you would like to take me out and teach me the ways of nature in the woods by the streams and the wells. Next, we went to England to visit the Summerland and the tin mines of Wales. Uncle Joseph was ready for us to board the ship. He came to get us all with the disciple Philip and some of the others. The name of another, Zacchaeus, comes with us too, and he was a little bit difficult. I was often seasick. We had provisions with us. Joseph was manning the ship. He sailed all around Great Britain. Quite a number of the followers came later. Joseph actually visited 3 sacred sites on the trip. So I'm not going to read the entire part about Cornwall and all the revelations, but this has to do with the area of Glastonbury that I'm speaking of, and the Summerland is still there today. So there are all kinds of roads named the Magdalene Way if you visit the UK. And when I visited the UK for the first time with a previous disciple friend of mine that I had regressed in past life regression, we stayed with her aunt, and we were given the warmest hospitality in England. And lo and behold, she says, "Oh, I belong to the St. Mary Magdalene Church. Would you like to come on Sunday?" So I was like, yes. So, you know, even in the stained glass windows, though, Mary Magdalene was depicted as a prostitute wearing red shoes. She was never a prostitute, she told me. She was Jesus' wife. So it's a whole different revelation, I would say. And I really thank you for listening to all my detailed research, and I hope you enjoyed the talk as much as I enjoyed giving it, because I haven't talked on it for a few years for obvious reasons. Are there any other questions or comments about Mary?
Ma'am, will you please tell us where we can find your booth?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, I have a few copies left of Mary Magdalene Speaks on sale. It's the second one over to the left. So there's one, and then it's to the right. So to my left and to your right when you walk down the road there. It's called The Angel Messenger with Marcia McMahon, and I have other books and I have other art, and I'd love for you to pick up a copy of the book. And if we don't have enough to go around, I'll be glad to take orders and ship them to you. And I will be glad to autograph them following the talk. So thank you very much for attending my chat today about Mary. And I know that you learned a lot, and I've done my best to corroborate the information through other mediums or through factual exploration or archaeology and visiting these various sacred sites. And I hope you all have a blessed day and enjoy the wonderful spirit of Mary Magdalene as she is here blessing the grounds, as well as Mother Mary. This is a recent painting I did of Mother Mary. And I do paint the Marys, and I do give retreats in Illinois on the Marys. So I'd be happy to do readings for you sometime this weekend, or do a channeled portrait. So please meet me at the booth following the talk. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.